Mr Chairman, I'm not at all surprised by the very defensive contribution from Eugenie Sage, because she was one of the regional councillors that had sat on the governance body of the most dysfunctional unit of local government in New Zealand. And when I want to say it was the farmers or the irrigators that asked the government to intervene in Canterbury, actually it was the 10 mayors of Canterbury unanimously came to the government. The Mayor of Christchurch, the Mayor of Waimak, the Mayor of Selwyn, so the 10 mayors of Canterbury, and mayors don't often agree, unanimously expressed no confidence in the body of which Eugenie Sage was on. The second point I'd want to make is that anybody who is engaged in the water issue in New Zealand knows that nowhere is it as important and pertinent as in Canterbury. It's where 70% of the irrigation in New Zealand takes place. It's where we've got our biggest challenges around water quality. It's also where over 50% of the hydroelectricity is stored in New Zealand. And despite all those factors, in 20 years of the Regional Council, we still had no operative rules around freshwater. And that was a disaster for New Zealand, and it was absolutely right of this government to say our freshwater in Canterbury deserves better, and we need to get some high-skilled people to get on top of these challenges. And I salute the work of the Dame Margaret Baisleys, of people like David Cagle, who does not share my politics, but does have a great deal of public service ability and dedication. People like Tom Lambie and those other commissioners. And when I reflect on the sort of extravagant language of people like Eugenie Sage and what I've just heard from Megan Woods about those commissioners, I say they are out of touch with the people that are actually done more to improve the management of water in Canterbury than anybody in a century. I want to challenge Megan Woods on a very basic point. She says, and she used language, that it was draconian, that the votes of Canterbury's were stolen by this national John Key-led government. Did Helen Clark steal the votes of all Aucklanders when she sacked the Auckland District Health Board? Did the member David Cunliffe, who I think Megan Woods was a strong supporter of him being a leader, did he steal democracy when he sacked the Auckland District Health Board? Did her good friend previously from the Alliance Party, Sandra Lee, did she steal democracy from the people of Kaipara when she sacked that council? Or was there a stealing of democracy when the Rodney Council was properly dismissed? The reports was overwhelming. Environment Canterbury had the worst record in processing consents and statistics that were recorded, and intervention was required. Now, Megan Woods has asked for a reasonable assurance, and that is, will there be local body elections in 2019, the same for every other regional council in New Zealand? And I give that assurance absolutely. But I also say that if we really are concerned about the water issues in Canterbury, we need to ensure that there is a smooth transition. And that is why actually the majority of councils in Canterbury have supported the transitional approach that is taken in this bill. I also want to reflect on an editorial in the Christchurch Press, and I go back and read it from when I announced the decision to sack the councillors and to appoint commissioners. And the editorial said this: voters will get to judge the merits of the government's moves at the election in 2011. And when we extended the arrangement, the editorial in the Christchurch Press said, voters will get to have their say on whether they support National in these interventions at the 2014 election. Well, what's surprising, and where I think we feel how out of touch Megan Woods and Eugenie Sage is from public opinion, actually National got the best results ever in history in Canterbury, holding seats like of Nicky Wagner's in Christchurch Central, because the voters knew that we had acted absolutely in the public interest and in the interests of freshwater with the intervention that we made at that time. Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr Chairman, this bill is about taking a responsible approach to government. It's ensuring that we maintain the momentum and a sensible transition around those crucial freshwater issues that are being developed in a collaborative way across Canterbury, and for those that really do beat their chest in this House, concerned about this country lifting its game about freshwater, they will back the commissioners, they will back the government in their intervention, because every independent observer has noted that there has been more done in respect of improving the management of freshwater over the last 6 years than what there had been in the previous 60 years. The fact of those red zones, the fact of those plans that have been put in place. Well, Eugenie Sage scrotes ahead. Tell me, how many dairy farm expansions have been declined in the period when she was an ECAN commissioner? You know what the answer is? Absolutely zero. Absolutely zero. In fact, if she looks at the record of the growth in the amount of dairy industry in Canterbury, it actually grew at its fastest rate and the most uncontrolled rate when she sat on the governance body of that board. And actually, the limits that have been put in place around nutrients is causing real tension, real pressure in Canterbury. But at last, the issues of freshwater in Canterbury are being properly constrained. Those diffuse pollution issues are having limits put on them, which is absolutely proper, and that's why I urge this Parliament to look at the progress that is being made, back those commissioners, ensure there's a smooth transition, and again I'd say what the government is doing is actually backed by a majority of the councils in Canterbury, and that's why we should see through this smooth transition and ensure the job that we started in 2010 is properly completed for the good of the people of Canterbury.